But first, from fools to teachers work to rule. This week, 500,000 teachers in England and Wales have said they're going to do a work to rule, doing the bare minimum at work in a battle over better paying conditions. And I suppose I have to ask, ultimately, is a work to rule better than going on strike and seeing schools close? I mean, there is no end to the work to rule, so it could go on for weeks, months, even years. The two leading teachers' unions, the NUT and NASWET, are behind the action. They're fed up with the 2-year public sector pay freeze, with changes to pensions, which mean, as is often the case with public sector workers now, that you have to pay more and work longer to collect less. They're also fed up with what they see as constant attacks by Ofsted Chief Sir Michael Wilshaw, who's recently called for tougher inspections in schools and claims some teachers don't work enough hours. And that's certainly really the case from Wednesday. According to a 25-point union plan, teachers will still take and hold lessons, but they'll refuse to do things like supervise lunch breaks, cover sick colleagues' lessons, put up wall displays, ignore emails, out-of-work hours, invigilate public on mock exams, and they're going to send fewer notes to parents. Extracurricular activities like sports may well still go ahead, but only if teachers have volunteered to oversee them. They can't be pressured into doing it by their heads. Is this situation fair on the pupils who've done nothing wrong? Union bosses like NUT Deputy General Secretary Kevin Courtney say the action is targeted at disrupting management rather than interfering with pupils' education. But the Department for Education say the action by unions will damage the teaching profession's reputation. Surely, though, I'll say it again, a work to rule is better than a proper strike. I mean, last November, when teachers walked out for just one day, 62% of schools were closed, causing chaos for parents and interfering with young people's education. A strike, which unions have a mandate for, would make the government come to the table more quickly, perhaps? I don't know, Georgie. I mean, would it?
Well, if I had kids, I'd be relieved in part that at least there is no strike taking place, because that has to be the last resort. So I'd be relieved by that. But the whole point of an education is that, I mean, the whole point is that you're trying to service, aren't you, those pupils, and you're trying to make them better people, and you're trying to make them more educated people so that, you know, later on in life they will, you know, play a big part in the economy and moving forward. And I just don't see how this helps them at all.
So if you're a teacher and you've signed a contract which the government then just decides to shred in front of you, but
that's not helping either. But
if you are a teacher who's just had the government tear up your contract without proper consultation, which is their argument, what are you supposed to do? Where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah, you have to make your voice be heard, and I understand that, but the only people that are going to miss out on it are pupils. Well,
you could argue that teachers have been missing out for years, that they are being taken advantage of by management who expect them to do things they don't get paid for. Therefore, teachers have been losing out for years.
But isn't that a part of being a teacher? Isn't part of being a teacher having that sort of a caring philosophy about the
notion of all work to rule is that the lowly employee ultimately is always exploited by the boss over and beyond what they get paid. And with the work to rule, yeah, but we all do. But with the work to rule, you suddenly say, well, I'm not doing those things. And suddenly that exposes, perhaps, the degree to which management takes advantage of the humble working man and woman. Socialist worker. But that would be, you know, that teachers have been taken advantage of for decades. And still that's not enough to get the government off their backs, because the government then comes after their pensions. Now they're saying, well, you see what it's like. You see what extra value you get from us. Maybe you'll think again. But
I understand that, but I also think that's part of being a teacher. In a positive way. I mean,
but they sign a contract. If your contract is torn up, you would be upset. You would be upset, and their contracts have been torn up. And the issue, I suppose, is whether or not one would approve of a work to rule, or whether one thinks it would achieve anything. I mean, my concern is, with no clear duration in mind, they will just be knocked back to the side and they will eventually give in.
Yeah.
And they won't achieve their goals. Whereas with a strike, a couple of days of pain...
It may be short-lived, but it may work. Yeah.
Chris, would you go for strike action? If you're a militant teacher and you wanted to get your contract, the contract the government offered you, and you want that contract enforced to the letter so you got everything you were promised, what would you do?
I think it's fair enough. We're having the same problem in Australia at the moment. They just had a strike last week or the week before.
It's last week.
And it's the same problem. One of my best mates at home is a teacher, and he's trying to get his degree at the same time as working as a teacher, but the school's giving him all these extra curriculum things to do after school, and he doesn't have time to actually go back to uni and go and get his degree.
Right.
So he's right. He's just stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Do you think, though, to get your way with a government that's committed to forcing new contracts on workers, do you think going on a work to rule where you're still there, still teaching, schools are still open, pupils still get their education, everything just continues, just not as smoothly as it did before? Do you think that's an effective tool to get what you want?
I think it is. I think it's better than taking doing a strike and having all the kids not go and all these schools shut down. I think it's a much better way. Except
if you do a strike, after a couple of days, the government gets very, very clenchy in the bottom department and thinking, are we going to lose votes? Is it all going to go horribly wrong?
Also,
do we need to back down?
The morale must be awful on a work-to-rule strategy, because over time, as time passes and they don't get their way and they're not being heard, but you're still doing the same things within the school place, you know, which many parents will start to get pretty frustrated by, I would imagine, as will pupils, because they're not going to benefit from it in the long term. I just don't see how that really works in the long term. But clearly it's a long-term plan.
I've been involved in a work to rule when I was a print journalist, and the one thing I learned about work to rule is management can ignore it for just about as long as you can carry on doing it. So, Steve, do you think it's an effective tool for the teachers?
Well, it's hard to know, because I don't know what the history of work to rules in the teaching sector, how productive they've been for the people on the work to rule. So it's hard to know without any historical evidence. I can't see, I mean, certainly not in the short term. This will be a kind of long game view, I think, of their struggle and how to fight the government on this. By which time we may be entering into general election time anyway. And yeah, teachers don't strike lightly. They're not known.
But when they do,
that.
they're still cast as evil, troublemaking lefties who don't give a monkeys about children's education.
This is one of the reasons why they don't do it, because they actually do care about the welfare of children. You don't go into it to become rich. You do it because you love it, in the same way with nursing as well. It's like there's a reason you do it. I think everyone would... I can't imagine that there are people, right-minded people, and I'm a parent of two children, that wouldn't back teachers all the way with this, and I would. And at the moment, when you look at the list of what would be affected in terms of, they tend not to be supervised very much at lunch break. The mock exams really where it will hit hardest, I think, because kids need to be.
Do you not think, though? See, I still think striking would be a far more effective and useful.
It would if you have an all-out.
I think ultimately you have less disruption. You'll have a lot of disruption.
But I think what you're not going to get. I don't think you're going to get the kind of same level of across-the-board agreement between the two unions. This is the first time the two unions are absolutely shoulder to shoulder on this, and I don't think you'd have that. You don't have that with strike action.
No,
it
but
tends to be very. It kind of causes a rift between people.
If your target is to get hold of the government and make them listen to you, I just wonder whether an indefinite work to rule is.
I know, but you're an old-fashioned lefty, you see, and I think that, you are. But no, and with all due respect, but it's that mentality. If you go all out or nothing, you want results. You make them clench their buttocks a bit harder. I'm kind of with you on that.